Pacers Nation. You are listening to the Pacers Post-Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan, a part of the Believe Sports Network, presented by FanDuel. Pacers fans, let's get into it. All right, Pacers fans, we are back for yet another episode of the Pacers Post-Up. Ryan, we are recording this right after the live, not live stream of the Mind the Game podcast that happened in New York at a Fanatics event or whatever and wasn't really broadcast. We got clips, etc., etc. Tyrese Haliburton, the co-host, the ultimate troll yesterday on Twitter with some of the lead into this. We're not going to start there. We will touch on it briefly because, frankly, we've talked about it too much already. It is a storyline that I know here on the Post-Up we are very excited to move forward from. But we did have a Summer League game yesterday afternoon out in Las Vegas. It was game number 4 for the Blue and Gold. You start to get to the point in Summer League, Ryan, where you're not sure if you're going to see the big names play, right? Because it's like, all right, we kind of have gotten the litmus test. There's not a whole lot more we're going to glean from this. But in the fourth game, we pretty much saw everybody. Now, there was a shakeup in the starting lineup, and I anticipate that will be the case again here. It sounds like we're going to have another game on Saturday out in Vegas to round out the Summer League slate. But it was a game that, frankly, the Pacers weren't really in this game, not a competitive game, but it sort of started to cement more of the storylines that we have seen play out up until this point. And I think from a headline perspective, to me, it continues to be Jalen Slawson putting together really a strong campaign and a message to this front office that, hey, I'm a guy that you want to keep. Certainly from a two-way perspective. Right before we jumped on, I know you were talking a little bit about some contractual stuff and how there are some dark horse ways for maybe him not making this roster in some form or fashion. I don't want to steal your thunder too much there, but we saw a little bit more from Braden Smith, and I think those are really the two guys that we're keying in on here. So we're going to do some Summer League reaction here to Game 4. We will touch on the Haliburton-LeBron discussion, and then certainly a shout-out to Quenton Jackson. But, Ryan, where do you want to kick off from a Summer League perspective?
Well, I like where you started, where you mentioned that a lot of the high-level names have stopped playing in Summer League, and that's very common, and the Pacers will have a game on Saturday. We don't know the time yet, but I think Jalen Slawson is at the point where we probably can shut him down.
Yeah.
He has clearly shown he is the most talented player, at least right now, on our Summer League roster, and he's done it averaging over 20 points a game in the Summer League. He's getting close to 6 boards, 3 assists. His shooting numbers, if you take out Game 1, have actually been really good. He's averaging, from the field over 40 or 50% from the field. In Game 4, he did shoot 2 of 5 from deep, so the 3-ball came together. The numbers with the Game 1, I think he was 2 of 9 from deep. So we know that, and some of the weaknesses we've seen have been on display for him. His handle was all over the place in the Wolves game the other day a little bit. He was in foul trouble, but that's kind of how Summer League is. They're doing things that are going to be a little bit outside their role, and so the way we're seeing Jalen Slawson excel, attacking the rim, these highlight blocks, highlight dunks, trusting the shot, even kind of getting to the jumper, being a little bit creative when he does drive, finding some dishes, is really what's impressed and why I think it's time to shut him down. We don't need to see anything because, to me, he has clearly solidified that offer for the two-way spot. And I'll get to why I say the offer, because the reason and risk right now is Jalen Slawson could get offered a minimum from another team. We have his rights to the two-way, but if somebody comes out and gives him a minimum offer, we would actually have to trade or make moves to clear cap space to fit him in. I'm not going to say that I think that is a likely scenario. In fact, I think we will retain him on a two-way. There's not a lot of teams maybe vying for this, but with that said, if there's a 20 or 30% chance and teams are looking around at Summer League talent, Jalen Slawson has stood out. Like, there's no doubt. And I think he would be a dark horse for me that if we did get him back in this two-way contract as the season went along, and I think we're going to be active at the trade deadline. We've talked about the contracts and who's coming up, Jarris, Ben Shepherd, all that. If we end up making a move, he'd be a guy who could easily see us elevate from a two-way into a standard deal so that we could have him in the playoffs in case of matchup, big wings, always have talked about the size and that thing. So it's all positive. I do believe Jalen Slawson will be our two-way offer. I just have a 10-20% fear that maybe another team's seen him and is willing to give him a minimum.
Ryan, it would be hard to go around the league and look at the 14th and 15th guys on every roster and not make a case for Slawson being at least worth a look, right? And potentially better than some of those guys out there. I mean, we had in the kind of auspices of the Larry Nance Jr. conversation, we had a discussion around James Johnson as our 15th guy, right? And all credit in the world to James and what he brought inside that locker room, but he wasn't a better player than Jalen Slawson.
Yep.
So depending upon the type of team, what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, depending on the organization, I could see a Slawson being a guy that rounds out a full 15-man roster. And it makes sense. I wasn't totally aware of that, but I remember when they said they extended him the qualifying offer. So it sounds like, he can go out and sign something with another team. We don't really have the ability to match it because of our cap situation right now. So that's kind of what you're alluding to. It's not nothing, okay? And the reason I say that is if you look through 4 games, he's averaged 20 and a half points, 7 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 3 blocks.
Yeah.
Now, the shooting numbers, including game 1, like you said, it's sub 30 from behind the arc because of how bad it was early, but he's been better. The turnover numbers have crept up a little bit. Foul numbers, some of those were ticky-tacky yesterday. He was really getting back and forth with the refs saying, come on, what are we doing here? And frankly, I don't think it's the NBA's best out in Vegas. No. They have 10 fouls.
They've got a tough job, though. There's fouls on every possession.
No question about it. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds on any of that stuff, but you just look at the gross numbers, the stat numbers. Forget about some of the inefficiency stuff. It's more points than we ever saw Jarris Walker average. Yep. It's more points than Ben Mathurin average in Summer League. And it's top, I think, 15 right now overall in Summer League. And so it's just one of those things that I think as you start to try and have any real meaningful takeaway, this is the guy that you say, all right, to your point, maybe we don't need to see anymore. Shut it down. We're going to play on Saturday. That will be what it'll be. Give some other guys a chance. And now it's about putting them on the two-way and seeing how this season plays out. Because we had a conversation a couple of episodes ago around the Quenton Jackson dynamic. And I guess I'll go there now. Congratulations to Q, because this is something that he has been working for a number of years, albeit two-way contract, and then we move him over to the standard at the end of last year. But maybe for fans that don't know, he was on a partially guaranteed contract coming into this season, and the partial was only $275,000. And so Tony East had it, and I think Dustin Topiric had it yesterday. It is now fully guaranteed for Quenton Jackson. Huge shout out to him. And I think it makes sense at the dollar amount that we're talking about, somewhere around $2.5 million. I forget exactly what the number is, but I think as this season evolves, particularly if we have subsequent transactions, Ben Shepherd, Jarris Walker, and I'm not suggesting that we should, because I think those are guys that could be long-term tenants in this, inside this franchise. But if we do, that's a guy that you could see moved around. I at the money that he has, it's, I don't want to say a throw-in type of contract, but it could be. And I still think there will be a debate depending upon injury, where we need guys. Slawson and Q are not that different. I mean, they're different types of players, but I don't think Quenton's up here from a talent perspective, and Slauson's some monumental shift down. I just don't see it that way. So I don't know if you've got anything else on Q. I do think we need to touch on Braden Smith, but I'll let you kind of pick up the ball and roll with it.
Yeah, Q, nothing much more. Very with you. Huge congrats. He's earned it. I think he's done it by being a locker room guy. I think he's shown the ability on the floor. We've seen multiple 20-point games. We've seen big outings. Defensively, he can fit in at that 1 or 2 position. And the Pacers felt comfortable moving forward with him as being the third string point guard and shooting guard. He's kind of going to be an emergency guy who you can throw in a starting lineup if Andrew Nembhard needs a day off or if TJ's out. He's going to run the second unit a bit. And so well-deserved for Q. And we'll move on to Braden because he's kind of the other point guard in this mix. And Braden, the best way I can describe his summer league is for the first halves of most of these games, he's a ghost. You can't notice him. It seems like he's not there. The offense tends to get better when he goes to the bench and we bring Yuki in. So it's really strange, but then you have seen flashes, and particularly in the last game against the Wolves in the third quarter, he had multiple lob dunks to Kava. Yep. One nifty one that I didn't even see kind of come. He threw it over the back shoulder, and he started to find rhythm. Really kind of closed game 3 well. We didn't get the final shot, but even set up mass. And so you see these numbers, and between the last 2 games, he has 17 assists. And in Summer League, that's not a small task because you're kind of just throwing it all together. Weird talent. He's working with different bigs, different lineups. You know, the training going into this, you don't get a real lot of time to get to know your other players. So that's impressive. But the word you used when we first came out of this over 2 games was underwhelmed. And I think I still sit there. Yeah. His scoring has come and gone. I think in the first halves of games right now, he only has like 2 field goals made. He's gotten to the line a bit, which has increased his numbers on some games, but only finishes in that Wolves game with 8 points again. He's been a little better on the boards, but some of that is just size and matchups. And so I still definitely wanted to see more from Braden, and I argue that I think Slawson should be shut down. I'd actually like Braden to still play the final game on Saturday, potentially, just to see if we can end on a really good note, because he does seem a little passive. The shot has largely not been there. I mean, I think he's like 1 of 10 from deep or something close to that on the Summer League, and his jumper looks smooth, but it hasn't fallen, and so I think some of his limitations and worries that we knew were going to be a real thing between his size, his burst, his speed has shown, but we have seen also some of the reasons why we drafted him with the vision, getting playmaking, and he does seem to get a little bit more rhythm as the game goes on.
I'm glad you said you wanted to see him again because I think it's imperative that we see him again. And the reason I say that is, A, the guy needs all the experience that he can get. He's got to feel this kind of pressure from NBA-esque size, speed, etc. And the other thing that you said that I had written down in my notes from yesterday's game, he is so much better when he's aggressive. You use the term passive. We have to have him being an aggressive playmaker, looking to get 2 feet into the paint, not getting off the ball really quickly. Like, those are the things that are going to separate a good from great player in this league. Because if you are a passive, get off the ball, like, we don't need him to be an off the ball, and they've used him off the ball a lot in Summer League. I get it. I just don't necessarily love it. Like even when we run 2 guard lineups with Haliburton and TJ McConnell, we've seen them on the floor a ton. They leave the ball in TJ's hands to initiate. They play Tyrese off the ball because he can be more of a shooter. TJ's not that guy. We know that. And really, TJ's most effective when he is orchestrating and pushing the tempo and being more aggressive. And I was sitting there yesterday just thinking, like, all Braden Smith, I mean, the defensive stuff is what it is. We know those limitations when you're 5'10", they don't go away. You just have to find a way to be a pest, kind of like Kawamura has been, kind of like the niche that TJ McConnell has carved for himself in this league, where you're going for the McConnell steals, you're picking up 94 feet, you're just being that pesky defender that kind of annoys somebody, even though they know they can get beat. Braden will always be able to get beat at his size if there's a superior, athletic player. So I don't want to minimize the defensive shortcomings, but I don't know how much he can do from a pure isolation defense perspective. I know there's schemes, and listen, I've read some of the stuff from Caitlin Cooper, and I think she does a great job talking about peel switching and where do you put him on defense. Those are schematic things that Rick Carlisle can go figure out. That's not what the point I'm trying to make. I'm saying if you're going to roster a guy like this, you're doing it for everything you said. the playmaking, the vision, setting guys up, all-time NCAA assist leader. Like you're not rostering him for defensive purposes. You're figuring out how to scheme with him to put him in the best possible position, knowing that it's still going to be a little bit of an Achilles heel for this, for this guy throughout his career. And so I just want to see him. It's game 5. Get on the floor, green light yourself, be aggressive, get yourself involved in these games and try to get, a little bit more. I don't care if it's get to your shot a little bit more, whatever. I just think we have to see him not try to get off the ball so quick. I've made that point very long, but it is just one of these things that's why we're sitting here saying underwhelming. And right now, Ryan, I think it is his pedigree and resume that are going to get him this third two-way spot, not anything that we have seen out in Las Vegas. Am I wrong to say that?
No, I don't, because even a guy in like Talon Peter, who we probably won't touch on a lot today, I thought had his best game against the Wolves, and there would be an argument if you were just watching these games that potentially Peter, in the way his game is more role fit, that he could be more NBA ready than Braden is right now. But we have to trust this front office, trust their draft process, trust the scouts, and know that Braden Smith's talents, if he can exceed at them like he did in the college game and translate it into the pros, is what we want to build on. The fast pace, the vision, the quick thinking, that kind of thing, and that's where Braden has shown enough to at least keep me excited, because there were times in his game where I wasn't overly excited, especially the first two, and he started to come around a bit.
Yeah, I think he has, and I hope he can. Again, I don't want this to get lost. I hope it works out.
Yeah,
I hope he is we're being critical because we have to call what we see on the court, but at the same time, you want to root for the guy, and it is a position of need. And I do think he's going to be the one that gets the spot. Yeah. And so, I in no way, shape, or form are we trying to undermine, his position here, but it's been underwhelming. Yeah. He's got an opportunity to be better.
We have to set expectations. He's a mid-second round pick. Like, these guys essentially become free agents. Some of the second-round picks don't even get signed. Like, this is not totally uncommon. And when we drafted him, we pretty much guaranteed he was only going to get a two-way, where a guy like Cam Jones, who last year was only taking a few spots ahead of him, we gave him a standard deal right off the bat. So expectations need to be managed, and, he's kind of an older rookie. But I think we're talking about it in part so much, too, because we were so excited about this draft, and we didn't quite get the players we wanted, so it kind of falls all the attention on Braden now.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I got to ask you one other thing, and this is coming out of left field, but I had this thought yesterday. We did a show a couple of days ago where we talked about Cam Jones and Ray J. Dennis, right? Yep. Those were the guards that we had last year. Obviously, we drafted Cam in a very similar position to Braden Smith. Didn't work out. And if you go back to last year's draft, do you remember what all the talk was about in the second round?
Like player-wise?
Player-wise.
I don't remember, no.
So I'm glad you don't. I'm going to refresh your memory. There was I'll say at least
Ryan Nembhard?
Decent faction of this fan base that was all in on little Nembhard. He goes undrafted, ends up in Dallas. It sounds like the reports were that there was a conversation inside our front office with Andrew Nembhard saying, we don't want to bring him in. He wants to chart his own path. We're going to pass on this guy. I don't know if that's ever been sourced and confirmed. That was the rumor at the time, that it's like, why are we taking Cam Jones? We know what Nembhard's work ethic, blah, blah, blah. What if we had taken Ryan Nembhard? Are we in a better spot now than the Cam Jones, Braden Smith experience?
We're definitely in a better spot than the Cam Jones experience. And Ryan Nembhard had some up and downs, but was in the rotation for the Mavericks for a while. And I think, his size limitations are very similar. He's smaller than, Drew is. If you put me on the spot right now, from what I've seen with Braden and what we saw Ryan Nembhard at the next level, I probably would have leaned right now, if I could do it all over, at having Ryan Nembhard on the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think... Again, and I'm trading a little bit on his brother's name because of what we've seen from Drew over the last couple of years. Obviously, the work ethic and his ability just to kind of be a dog, a guy that lives and breathes basketball. And you see the two of them, Ryan and Andrew, training in the offseason together, some of the Team Canada stuff. This is not a knock at Braden Smith, but it is it's a real conversation, Ryan, because we still don't have a clear answer at what this backfill point guard role looks like. And that's, I hope it can be Braden Smith. I hope for him and for this fan base and frankly for this organization that we don't have another swing and a miss, because we've been pretty good with these late first, early second round picks. You think about Andrew Nembhard, you think about a guy in Johnny Furphy. Ben Shepherd was a late first rounder. Isaiah Jackson, I understand some may label it a bust, but he helped us facilitate the Zubac trade, had enough value at least, to help with some of that. So here nor there, I think we'll see what happens on Saturday. And we'll probably get a reaction out. Ryan's going to be traveling this weekend, but maybe I can fly solo if there's some things to talk about after we wrap up the fifth and final game. But any closing thoughts on Summer League before we kind of go a little bit around the league on a couple other items?
Yes, let me pin you, and I only want 30-second response here. Let's say worst case scenario, Jalen Slawson doesn't get the two-way spot because somebody else goes out and offers him a minimum and we can't move our roster around to make it work. Has Talon then earned that spot if it's the final spot available, or would you look elsewhere?
I would look elsewhere first.
Okay.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
He has shot 40% through 4 games from deep. I went and looked at it before we jumped on. It's just under 10 points an outing.
He's played pretty good defense too. He stays in front of people pretty well. He's moved his feet.
Ryan, I think it's more to me about position. Like if Slauson's gone, I would go get another point guard. We had Quenton Jackson and Ray J on two-way deals. Yep. Like I just think I don't love the idea of all the eggs in the Braden Smith basket right now. To me, that's short-sighted because you're an injury away from maybe having to play him, and that gets really ugly really quick. So, I'd look elsewhere first. If it ends up being Peter, then I'm fine with it, but I'm just less convinced now than I was at the start of last season that he can be a meaningful piece.
I hope Peter stays in the G League conversation. He's a guy that I still have a little bit of stock in. The role he plays in Summer League, he's so reliant on other people getting him shots and the flow of the offense, but to me, he seems to be in the right spot a lot. As you mentioned, he shot over 40% or right at 40% from deep in the Summer League, and his defense has been pretty impressive. So I'm with you. I probably would lean the way you go to go see the market, see who's out there, but I'm hoping there's a way we can at least keep him in the ecosystem. I would be surprised if some other team is jumping to get him on a two-way.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you can keep him inside the boom, that to me is a win. Whether he wants to agree to that, a lot of these guys can go make more money going overseas and all that stuff. So it'll be something to pay attention to. And who knows, if Slawson does go somewhere else, that's a real conversation. And we'll see where all of that ends up. But Pacers fans, hope you guys are enjoying Summer League. It is, the basketball's a little rough, but it's fun to talk about some of these guys who are frankly fighting for their lives from an NBA career perspective. Somebody who's not fighting for their life from a career perspective is LeBron. He is fighting for attention, and he is willing to do absolutely anything to get it, including dragging this on to the point where, Ryan, I feel like we are at Decision 2.0. He is out at the Fanatics Fest in New York City doing the Mind the Game podcast, basically quoted as saying, I'm not going to drag it on too much longer. And it's like, we're into mid-July, dude. Like, people started... Most of the major deals were done right when it opened, within the first 48 hours of, free agency, new league year, July 1st, all that. I mean, technically it was June 30th that afternoon. You could start announcing some of these deals. But I guess just from a Pacers fans perspective, those that maybe aren't on Twitter, there was no live stream of the podcast. The podcast is, I believe, going to be dropping basically when this show drops, because we're going to drop this on Friday morning, and I anticipate theirs will as well. Tyrese did ask him about his free agency. LeBron shut it down very quickly. The report also is that Tyrese, way back before LeBron even announced that he was leaving the Lakers, Tyrese sent him a message and said, hey, what about Indy? And LeBron responded with 2 laughing face emojis. So I say all of that to say, my hope as a Pacers fan and resident LeBron hater is that we can just move on from this, that we can put this conversation to bed. And I am of the belief that no matter where he goes, Miami, Philly, Cleveland, Golden State, dark horse, Boston, wherever. I don't think this guy is winning a title. I'm not worried about it. We have a championship roster right now, as it stands, in Indy, and I would much rather just focus on that and move forward.
Yeah, I, on the drive over, thought about this, and I'm not going to go more than a minute here on LeBron because, quite frankly, he doesn't deserve this. So I'm going to give you a movie quote, Brad. We are big fans, Dumb and Dumber fans.
Yeah.
There is a scene where I think it's Harry comes in, has just been fired from his dog grooming job, and is sitting on the couch.
Mutt cuts.
Yes. And is sitting on the couch describing to Jim Carrey's character, Lloyd, why he was fired and what happened. And Lloyd gave us a great quote that I think embodies LeBron and how I feel about him. And that quote is, "Man, you are one pathetic loser." And that is how I feel. And this decision stuff is a joke. Who gives a shit? I think he's going to pull a wild card and try to go make this a show. And that's why you throw out dark horses like Boston, New York, Miami, these teams. He knows where he's going. He's known the whole time. He's just trying to get all the ego, build his suspense for his farewell tour. And truthfully, I believe this in my core. If you go out and talk to casual fans, nobody likes LeBron anymore. He's annoying. He's a bitch. He has done so much that people overlook to negatively impact the NBA. I don't know why everyone just assumes he's been this great face. And to tease it finally, I texted Brad before this episode, and we said we were finally going to do a full episode on just LeBron and why we think he's been so bad for the NBA and fans and what he stood for as a player, not a person. He does seem to have always, had a high character, but what he's meant for the NBA, that one will be coming, and we hope to drop it around when he does his decision, what could be fucking weeks. I don't know.
Who knows at this point? What a loser. That's a wonderful line, and it sums up pretty much how I feel. I know that there are some that are listening that are going to say, what do you mean? Second greatest player of all time. Look at the stats. Look at the longevity. Go listen to Jeff Teague when you talk to me about longevity, and we'll get to that when we get to our LeBron kind of pulling the curtain back, if you will, on some of these narratives that I just don't think it's a bit of a house of cards with him. And we'll see. Again, I don't want to get too far down into that, but we'll see when he makes the decision. He has dragged this on. I thought it was clear that nobody liked the decision 1.0,
No.
and here we are in year, 23. Now the talk is, maybe this won't be his last year. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah,
could be another 2 years, get to 25 years in the league for LeBron. Nobody's ever done it. And good for him. If that's what you want to do at this point in your career, is not win titles and just chase all these other, I played with my kid because I basically, basically manufactured the whole thing. I mean, it's fine, right? If that's what's most important to you, LeBron, it's fine. My argument has been, don't bring it to Indianapolis. We've built this team around culture, around guys that are more about team than themselves. And I think that is emblematic of what Indiana basketball is supposed to be. And call me crazy, whatever, that matters to me. I think the way you go about winning matters. And maybe that's a little old school for some of our audience, but I'm going to stand on that ground, and I'll sleep at night just fine, going to bed saying, hey, I don't really want that in this organization. I love the guys that we have, and I'm ready to ride with them going into this next year. And I hope that once we get on the other side of this decision, that's what the conversation can be about. It can be about how do we build up into, frankly, Ryan, some really exciting things going into next season. Zubats, Kelly Oubre Jr., obviously like Haliburton's return being the penultimate moment of excitement. So plenty to get to. This is just kind of the way it goes with summer and the decisions and all this stuff. We'll move on from it and hopefully have plenty of other things to talk about going forward. But Ryan, anything else before we wrap this one up and bring it in for a landing?
Nope, all good.
Pacers fans, appreciate you guys listening. As always, we've still got the giveaway tagged or pinned, I should say, at the top of our Twitter profile. Make sure you go enter it. Get your chance to win a pair of Hali ones. Appreciate you guys listening. As always, go Pacers.